everybody, and welcome. I'm Alan. This is Felix. He's my co-host, and welcome to another OEWeek live. These are live webcasts, and we're live right now on the internet. And these are things that I'm doing during Open Education Week, just to bring interesting people together to talk about the work they're doing, their interests, their hopes, even what they're worried about. And the whole point of this is just to have more casual conversations. It seems like welcome Nadine, you're just in time, and we are live. And I'm just saying that I set these up really inspired by what we used to do with Maha and Mia through virtually connecting. And those were such warm times that I felt like there's still a space to have unstructured conversations in between all the things that we do. And I just want to thank everyone, because I sent a message and said, would you like to come on one of these? And the interest was so wrong, I made a special show just for Equity Unbound. And so I'm really excited to welcome my friends to the studio here, and to people who are watching online. Let us know in the chats if you want to say anything. But mostly I need to shut up and welcome. And I'll just ask everyone to let us know. My question I've been doing this year is Maha remembers my questions, right? Of course, who you are, like where in the world you are, and if you have a window, or you could look out a window right now, what will we see out your window? So I'm gonna go first to my friend Mia. I'm skipping you first, Maha. I'm going to Mia. Hello, Mia.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. And I'm also thinking of my beloved compatriots here who are very tired because they're in Egypt and it's very late at night there during Ramadan. So thank you for inviting me to speak first, because maybe it's like a gentle warm up for the rest. I am in New Jersey. I'm a literature and writing professor at Kane University, where I direct our master's in writing studies program. I'm an open educator. I've been doing all kinds of open experiments for a while now. And if you look out of my window, first of all, it's a very stormy moment in New Jersey. There's some hail, there's some just mood, like lots and lots of rain and wind. It's a March storm basically here. And then you can also see beautiful, bright red berries. They're called winterberry, and the birds love them. And if it was not hailing out right now, you would also see bluebirds that land on that bush and eat just a little bit here and there and things like this. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a snapshot of where in the world is Mia. And I guess I'll pass it on to how about Nadine? How do you feel? Are you ready to jump in and introduce yourself? One of the things that Alan said was one of our prompts was, if you were to look out a window where you are right now, what would you see?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Nadine Aboulmagd. I'm from Cairo, Egypt. I work at Equity Unbound as the program manager with these lovely ladies here. And if I were to look out my window, it's a very interesting experience, actually, because we are overlooking the Mexican embassy. And it is wonderful because they are a really festive bunch. And they're not the noisy neighbors that you don't want to have. They're very actually respectful of everything, and they do their parties and they end their parties before midnight and so on. So it's very sweet and very mindful because it's a very residential area. But like their Cinco de Mayo is wonderful, and I watch always. Like I don't know if you remember this scene from the cartoons or the movies where the little girl is like on the windowsill and like watching everybody, and with all the lights and the beautiful orchestra. So this is what I always see when I look out my window. So it's wonderful. My Mexican friends, and if anybody from Mexico is watching us, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm happy to be here.
That's pretty cool to imagine that.
Okay, so I'm also in Cairo, Egypt. I'm the co-facilitator of Equity Unbound along with Mia. And actually, so it is the holy month of Ramadan, and that means that people don't really sleep a lot. So even though everybody here is probably sleepy, outside my window, people are awake up until like dawn, because people can only eat until dawn. So people are awake at different times of day, and lights are on. And I'll tell you guys something really funny. When my daughter was very, very young, she didn't used to go out at night a lot. And the first time she went out at night during Ramadan and she saw all these lights, she said, "Christmas lights." And I realized my fully Egyptian daughter, who grew up in Egypt, didn't know that these were called Ramadan lights. She thought they were Christmas lights, because she'd seen Christmas lights in the morning, but she'd never seen them at night. And so she just thought that those are Christmas lights. They're pea lights, you know. So that's what you'd find. You'd find a lot of colorful lights and decorations in the streets, and just people awake and eating and just walking around at night. And it's cold-ish in Egypt. Like Mia was in Cairo a couple of weeks ago, and it was a very warm thing. And the day she left, seriously, the day she left that morning, the weather was so gloomy and rainy, and the sun didn't come out for a while. And yeah, today's a little bit better. But yeah, so Yasmin, what's outside your window?
Hi everyone, I'm Yasmin Abu Fadl, and I was interning for MYFest, which is an annual conference during the summer organized by Equity Unbound. And outside my window, there's nothing quite special. It's just like a street and maybe a nice place. Like there's just like some trees and flowers and stuff. Our neighbors in front of the house take care of the place of the neighborhood. So I say this is what's outside our window. And yes, it's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. And as I said, we don't have a conversation plan, but obviously we should probably, if people watching aren't aware of what Equity Unbound is, we can talk about that. And definitely MYFest. And of course, Maggie wants to know about hospitality, because she's a very she's a very affectionate cat who wants to be in it. But it's we're just here for a conversation, and really I'm kind of excited, considering Maha graciously before show she kind of called me a co-founder of MYFest. I was kind of there at the beginning and I remember it, but to see how it's evolved and grown, especially last year, with the number of people involved and participating, was a real joy to see that.
Yeah. Equity Unbound has grown up quite a bit. It's gained momentum over the years, and we're really proud of everything that we've been able to do. So yeah, I guess one thing we could jump in and talk about is just a little bit of its evolution before we get into the things that, really underpin the work and make it distinct and special out there. In the world of education, and more specifically in the world of open education, et cetera. So Maha, do you want to start with like a little bit of the origin story, and then we can just back and forth it, naturally?
I was typing for you in the private chat if you wanted to do Equity Unbound, and I can do MYFest, but I can start with Equity Unbound, then you finish Equity Unbound, and I'll do MYFest.
Okay, that sounds great.
Equity Unbound started originally. So we say Equity Unbound is an equity-focused, open, connected, intercultural learning. Originally curriculum, now learning just experience in general. It started out that, Alan, you were involved sort of without you realizing it when you and Mia were teaching in our course, and sometimes we would connect with my students every now and then. And then one time, Mia and I were like, hey, maybe we should do a more formal thing that our students connect more. And Catherine Cronin was also we were all in the UK, and Catherine Cronin was there. And the three of us together were like, let's do this and let's make it open so it's not just our own students. One of the things is a lot of intercultural learning experiences that happen are either just between one person and another person in a different country and they connect their students, or it's organized in these very closed, structured ways. And we were like, but the ways we connect in the open the open educational practices we do on a daily basis, which is how we all met well, I mean, how I met you guys, at least, Mia and Alan. I mean, we wanted our students to experience that as well with each other, a little bit of structure because they may not be able to manage this on their own. So we started out in this way where we would organize activities where our students would connect with each other and make it open so that others who may be interested in this topic or this reading or this activity could join in. And a lot of people tended to find it useful. But what was funny is we also did like studio visits, kind of conversations like we're doing right now, which is also something that you used to do, Alan, when you and Mia were teaching together and in your other practices. And we started to realize that, oh my God, educators are benefiting from this. Educators need this connection as well. And then Mia, do you want to share a little bit about how we evolved into other things? And then I'll do the MYFest part.
Sure. So I think, one of the things we had in mind from the beginning was this underpinning of social justice and equity. And then, of course, the intercultural element was very important to us in terms of designing experiences, learning experiences in the open. When we started gaining some momentum, it was also around the time that George Floyd was murdered, and we were doing inclusive citation work, and we were kind of sharing that conversation. And then we expanded upon that even more and started to think about ways in which we can, re-understand what it means to learn in the open and across borders and boundaries. So we had many different initiatives along the way, but I think the pandemic really became a kind of pivotal moment for us as a network as well. It helped generate a kind of connectedness in crisis, really. That dreaded moment of the pivot was something that we responded to directly. And this is when our conversation around care and the issue of care sort of really became front and center. All along the way, Maha and I are kind of writing about the issue of care and education as well. So not only are we pursuing practices that center the idea of care in a time that's careless in many ways, but we were also writing about what we were experiencing and ultimately theorizing and casting a scholarly lens on what is possible and impossible in the context of education at a time of certain crisis. So the pandemic was a key moment, pivoting and using technologies to connect at a time when we were sort of isolated in our own spaces and yearning for deeper connection with others. That was an inflection point. And then ultimately, when we were sort of experiencing all of that and maybe coming out of the fog of the initial aspect of the pandemic, we dreamed up essentially a festival that would help us restore and renew our souls and our heads and our hearts through connection and through teaching and learning. And so again, I'm going to pass it back to Maha so that she can tell us a bit about MYFest. But MYFest is something that's ongoing. And as we move to the June, July, and August season of 2025, we're essentially in the fourth iteration of MYFest. So not only has Equity Unbound grown up in many ways as a network, as a community, a participatory community that co-designs learning experiences in the open, but also the festival that is our anchor experience each year in the mid-year. That's June, July, and August, depending what part of the world you're in. It's the mid-year festival, MY mid-year festival. At any rate, that festival will be in its fourth iteration in June, July, and August of 2025.
Yeah. So just as Mia was talking about the evolution of Equity Unbound, one of the things Mia and I realized was happening is the emergence was huge for us. It wasn't like We come here, this is what Equity Unbound is, and those are the boundaries, and we stop, and this is all we do. We kept changing what we were doing, thinking about what does the world need right now? What does our community need right now that we're able to offer? So, there was a continuity with care thing for going online. There were these community building resources that I hope Alan has shared with folks that we developed to help people figure out how to build community online. These were asynchronous resources we offered in 2020. And a lot of people from all over the world contributed to these. It wasn't just us. We were curating with others. And there was another socially just academia project that we went through after the murder of George Floyd, because we felt like academics need to respond with social justice. The Mid-Year Festival came out of a need that as we were finishing the pandemic and going into hybrid and face-to-face mode, we were like, wait a minute, why are online conferences 3 days long and we're crammed on Zoom for 3 days, for 3 whole days, and people have their lives to do and they have to choose between things. So there was Zoom fatigue, decision fatigue, and we're like, wait a minute, we need to focus on people's well-being right now, and people need community now, but they need not to have it all in like 3 days. We're like, we're online anyway, spread it over 3 months. There is really no need to have an online conference that's very tight in time. I think there's echo somewhere, isn't there? I'm hearing echo. I don't know where it's coming from. Anyway, and so the Mid-Year Festival was meant to be restorative and rejuvenating for educators in our community. And we didn't want, again, like conferences where people were talking at everybody. We wanted community, to have sessions where people come and discuss things together, to have interactive workshops. And all this were topics that we were like 13 facilitators from all over the world. And because some of us were in the Southern Hemisphere, we're like, it's not a summer festival, it's a mid-year festival, because for people in South Africa, it's not summer during June, July, and August. And we were contributing different things for folks. And we kept adding things as people asked for them. It's not like, oh, this is the conference, it has a fixed schedule. It was like, oh, we just did this session and people now want to do this other session. And participants decide they want to do something and they can go ahead and do that. And again, underpinning all of this was, we would talk about things like open education, but from a social justice perspective. We would talk about well-being, and we would do sessions that were intergenerational, where we could bring our grandparents and our children and our neighbors, and we would do fun things together. It didn't have to be restricted to a particular thing. We never had a huge number of students, but we had a couple of students every year, and we would have very young children as well as, people who would just jump in with their neighbor or child or whatever. We did this. We've done this for 3 years, and Nadine is now our program manager. Yasmin was our intern last year, and now is still continuing to work with us, which is great. And they also helped us do some research about it by talking to people in our community about what it is they value and what they want going forward. And I do want to say something. So a lot of what we offer at Equity Unbound, sometimes, oh my God, ChatGPT happened. Let's just give workshops on this because people need this, and they need hands-on workshops rather than someone talking at them. And a lot of what we offer is free and open. Now, Mid-Year Festival, we have funding from the Hewlett Foundation to pay facilitators, but it's not a free event, but it's a pay what you can, and zero is one of the options. So we still consider it open in the sense that anybody would be able to join if they can't afford it, and that's always been very important for us. And a lot of our participants are Global South or people who are graduate students who don't have funding or contingent, so they wouldn't be able to get funding from their institution. So it's so important for us to make sure that our events are there for everybody. Oh, Robin is saying on YouTube, it hadn't occurred to her how much more inclusive differently abled people online events have the potential to be. And one of our co-organizers is actually a student who is visually impaired, and he's one of our most active participants. He hosts a lot of the Zoom sessions, Yasser Temer, and he has taught everybody so much about accessibility because he's a disability advocate as well. Like, he's not just someone who's there, he teaches us all the time.
Yeah, I got to, I did interview Yasser for the student award that he got, but then we've been talking on and off again. And I really want to do something with his help that maybe would be part of MYFest this year. And like, I really want people to understand what it's like for people who are visually or audio impaired or whatever challenge they have. We don't really understand what it's like for them. And, you know, if you've ever had the opportunity to have to use a screen reader to navigate the web, I'm in awe that anybody can do it. I would go crazy. And it's heroic what it takes to do that. And I don't think we have an understanding of that just by going by checklist and things of guidelines. I think really to understand what it takes for people to do that. And we're trying to get something going for Open Education Week, and Alan's schedule flew out the window, but I think we're going to line up something to do for MYFest.
Great.
I also noticed in the comments earlier that Robin said hopefully those in the United States will be able to attend online without fear of threatening institutional funding or jobs, etc. And I just wanted to share that one of the important underpinning values of MYFest is that sense of safety. And we have had participants and facilitators in the past who have remained anonymous or taken on a pseudonym in order to do the work that's very meaningful to them in a way that they felt comfortable with. So we already have, you know, an ethos around concerns like this, but there's no doubt that this shift since January will ratchet up our awareness and our strategies around those issues. So, Robin, I just wanted to speak to that directly because it's a very real issue.
I'd love to hear from Nadine and Yasmin, because you're in the middle of it, or the mix for it. Like what the experience has like been for you, either as participants and maybe some hints about what's on tap for this year.
I think you can go ahead and start.
Did you say Nadine can go ahead and start, or did you say I can go ahead and start?
You can go ahead.
I'll go for it. This won't take too long. One of the really exciting things for me right now is looking at the research that we did for MYFest last year, because we interviewed Yasmin and I. We did this also with Maha and Mia and everybody, right? We interviewed everybody that we could, really, who participated, facilitated, organized, or was part of MYFest in any way, shape, or form. We invited a lot of people to speak with us and tell us about what makes MYFest and Equity Unbound special for them. What are the values they share? What are the wonderful things they like about MYFest, and what also they would like to change? Whether it's, these little logistical things about, I want to receive the duration of the session in an email instead of just the starting time, or even, the more bigger concepts and values, and what are the things that we should be considering at Equity Unbound and MYFest in terms of the choice of topics, and how much they appreciate the fact that we're always choosing topics that are up to date and are current, and it's really what people are needing. And hearing also about how much they love the informality aspect, the lack of hierarchy in MYFest, and the way that people are just so giving and altruistic towards each other, about wanting to share knowledge and be part of a community and growing and learning and creating together. So one of the things that are very exciting for me right now is to look at that research and to think about ways to make MYFest even more meaningful, even more applicable for people, for everybody, and to even consider how to engage and incorporate the audiences and people who we don't always hear from. So diversifying those who are attending and being around. And it's just, I'm always thinking about ways not to really market in the way of marketing a conference, in the traditional sense, but also just reaching those people who are naturally part of the community and they don't even know it yet, right? There's so many educators around the world that have the same values that we have at Equity Unbound, and they're doing wonderful things in their classrooms and in their institutions, and they're very equity and hospitality focused the way that we are, but they're not part of our community yet, and I want to reach those people and get them, involved as much as we can. All I'm saying is they're part of the community and they just don't know it yet. We just have to find them and they have to hear about us or learn about MYFest. So this is one of the things I'm really excited about, especially this year.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, go ahead, Yasmin. I think you're talking, but you're muted, because unless you're not talking to us.
Yeah. Yes. So Nadine, because it's lagging a bit, I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yep. We hear you.
So yeah, I wouldn't add much. Nadine covered a lot, but like maybe I would share my experience as a participant at first, because even though I started interning, so working on the administrative part of the conference, but also as a participant, it was definitely a very eye-opening experience for an educational conference, because in my head, usually conferences like that are very, a very formal environment, that is just tackles cliche topics a bit, or not cliche, of course, they're relevant. There's a reason why they're always going like a topic of great interest. But with MYFest, I always felt that like the well-being and joy themes, the community building and community reflection, and seeing that a real community of people who share the same values and really want to further and develop their skills, not just their professional skills, but their interpersonal and their everything. This for me was very new and very special. So definitely it's a very valuable community to be experience, and a beautiful community. I would really like everyone to be part of, and as Nadine mentioned, trying to market, but not also market it in the marketing sense. Like this is also something we have to think about. But in general, just this ethic of care, and again, influenced with the ethos of intentionally equitable hospitality, is great. And it does sometimes sound natural when you're part of MYFest. Everyone internalizes this spirit. However, when one comes to think of it in the real world, it would be great if it is integrated even more and more in other contexts. So, yes.
And it'd be great to figure out how to more students.
And like maybe one last thing, also the age aspect. I've always felt a bit intimidated that I'm a bit young. When I joined, I was still a student. So also this lack of hierarchy, like Nadine mentioned, everyone has a say, and everyone does come into the space with their own perspective, the things they could give, but also learn from many. So yes, it's a very valuable experience for sure.
Yeah. And maybe Yasmin and Yasser can help us. What Alan was going to ask is like, it would be great if there were more students, right? And there were some of the children of the participants doing things together, like playing Minecraft together and doing readers theater, which is something Laura Gibbs used to organize, where you bring children and parents and grandparents and we read a play together, which was one of the most valuable experiences that my own daughter loved a lot. But it would be great if Yasmin and Yasser can help us bring in more students. We did one activity where Yasmin, you helped us get a lot of students for the co-creation of AI guidelines session, which wasn't officially Equity Unbound, but we would love to have more of that. Just we don't know if they want to give up their holidays for this, but there are a lot of young people interested in education, right? The thing about if we could have intentionally equitable hospitality everywhere, and back to what Nadine was saying, is one thing we've all learned is saying everyone is welcome doesn't mean that everybody understands that they're welcome. And it needs a lot more intentional hospitality of making sure the space is welcoming for people who are very different from us and very different from, they may have the same values, but they may not realize that they would feel welcome in this community. So how do we reach out and invite them in and let them know that, yes, if you can't afford it, you can just come in. You don't even have to explain why. And then also this element that Yasmin is saying is like everybody practices this hospitality, not just the facilitators, because you're going to do an activity, you're going to send people to breakout rooms, and you don't know what's going to happen in the breakout rooms. Someone could dominate the conversation, or someone could say something really offensive. Like, you never know what's going to happen. And so because we spend so much time together over several months, and we keep reminding each other of this ethos, I think this is one of the things that I wish everyone, we've been talking about this also, like, can you take this back to your institution? A lot of people come here and they're the only person in their institution who has these very explicit social justice values. And now I know with what's happening in the US, this is even harder to be more explicit about. But a lot of people have it, and they're trying to find different vocabulary for it. We were just talking about this, weren't we, Mia, about people needing to do this work and call it something else so that it doesn't get harmed by what's going on.
Yeah, Maha and I have been speaking a lot about moral injury lately together and with others. The sense of being harmed from a public, like, kind of in a reception mode, like you're listening and you're taking in, commentary that's being said in a political context or a cultural context, and it's injuring your sense of morality and your ability to be courageous in moving forward, etc. How painful this is as an experience, and then thinking about the presence of potential harm in many different spaces. All these things are very much concerns we have, and it informs our way of proceeding and thinking about bending in different contexts to make sure that everyone might feel included. There's no doubt, though, that the notion of care is complicated, and you can never assume just because you want to be hospitable and you are making moves that you think are hallmarks of hospitality, that means somebody feels included and comfortable. Trust is a very complex thing to develop. It's not something that you can just make a claim on, like this is a space that's safe for you. You can't just say that and then that is, even if you intend it to be, that is just, it's just not, it just doesn't equate, So that's what Equity Unbound is, in a way. It's the dynamism of understanding that, being responsive, making moves to constantly calibrate, and being aware that there are things you don't know about everyone else that might situate them in a way that makes them uncomfortable. Being aware that you don't know everything, no matter how much you want to help someone and invite someone in, etc. And I think there's comments from Robin, so I'll just be quiet for a minute and take those in, and anyone can jump in.
So,
well, we ponder this because this is a big point Robin has. It's always felt to me like the most impact of IHE is when it happens in very small very small amounts. Like we speak it and we make it visible, but I think when you experience it, you may not even know, but you know what it feels like to be welcomed and to be listened to. And I know we all try to do that in all our encounters, but like sometimes it seems like we try to affect a lot of people at the same time, and it's really like these smaller acts that I think have more impact.
Yes, this is like Adrienne Marie Brown says, small is all, and everything that's big starts small, and then the small is replicas of this. And this also relates to the work Mia and I do in our scholarship, which is a socially just distributed care. When you say socially just, it's not like each one of us is able to care for 200 people. It's that at any point in time, each one of us may be able to care for like 6, 7, maybe 10 people at a time. And those 10 people are caring for another group of other people. And so that's why we're talking about how the whole community gives that care to each other. And I do want to, and I know Mia might want to say something more about this, but I would love to hear from Nadine and Yasmin also, like, the issues of like, what is it about this community that makes it seem authentic and sincere and people not scared of the cruelty and trolling? This vulnerability aspect, I'm thinking about like Bell Hooks talks about how it's so important that the teacher or facilitator makes themselves vulnerable before they ask anyone else to make themselves vulnerable. And it takes time to build that trust so that everybody else feels like they can. And also, if someone is joining MYFest for the 3rd year in a row and someone is doing it for the first time, how do you make sure it doesn't feel cliquish, where people feel like, oh, I don't belong to that? And so I'd love to hear from Nadine and Yasmin first, because they experienced this themselves as insider-outsiders and were not there the whole time in the process. Like Nadine was sort of there the first year a little bit, then not the second, but she was there the third, and Yasmin came in the 3rd year. But you also interviewed a lot of people. So I'm curious about how you felt like this authenticity and vulnerability. I think Yasmin dropped off. But
I think Yasmin lost. She'll be back. She's coming right back.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. My internet
That's okay.
So I can actually mention a couple of things. So one of the things that I wanted to share a little bit a while ago is the fact that we are together as a group and individually vulnerable with each other and open, and we deeply care about each other. And even in our internal planning meetings, we embody these values because it's just the way that we deal with each other. I think that brings so much into the understanding of this. And this is also why I wrote that it's about the everyday interactions. And I feel like if you are already embodying these values and acting in those ways, and you have those beliefs on a day-to-day with just colleagues and friends and family, and then you start integrating it into your teaching experience and in your class and in your institution in general, then it becomes a little bit more of a natural extension of what you're like overall in your day-to-day. And the thing that I want to say about how the Equity Unbound community shows these values to me, I mean, I don't think I have been an outsider. I mean, maybe to MYFest, for 1 year I wasn't involved, but I've been involved since virtually connecting. And it's also very hard for me to think about a time when I wasn't involved at all. And this is why I would love to hear from Yasmin. But I will say one of the things that also struck me back then is how welcoming and open and sharing everybody was. And I remember even telling this to Maha, because I was coming in from a very, the academic institution kind of mindset where people stay in their space or they stay in their place, and you don't talk, that openly with a professor. Like, I was also very young, a fresh grad and so on. So the idea that people are always sharing, they don't feel like sharing and giving advice and talking so openly and being vulnerable takes away from their power. On the contrary, it's something that there's space for everyone to grow. It's not that if I don't share with you, then I will grow and you will stay little. It's not about that. So this openness and this the vulnerability and the care and the humanness in the whole experience was something that struck me, and it got me right away. And I felt so much that I belong because I have these values naturally. And I'm not saying the people who, don't have the personality don't belong. I'm saying I feel like it just comes naturally when you're dealing in these ways already in your day-to-day, and it just becomes this natural open extension towards your class, your community, the world,
And before Yasmin says something, I want to let you know something, Yasmin. You actually have a superpower. And so by being young, like it, and I got this advice when I first started in this field, and I had a great mentor who said, being new means you get to ask questions. And it's not like you're asking questions like you're critical, like, oh, I know better. What you're doing is blah, 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 blah. You can just say, like, I'm really not familiar, but can you explain why you're doing this? Or I don't really. So asking questions as someone who doesn't involve, it's a gift to everybody else. So use that power.
It's good to hear that. It's nice. It's nice. It's reassuring to hear it, because sometimes one can get a bit intimidated. But again, like related to what Nadine was saying, it also came to me as a surprise joining this community, how everyone was welcoming and open, and also but related to the point about this, like the ethos of intentional equitable hospitality, first of all, it was something new, even though it can come naturally a bit to me, I would say. However, something that I realized throughout the process is that you also, even though you might feel that you embody certain values or that you try to promote them, you try to make everyone feel welcome or heard, sometimes being able to do it, especially when you're on the spot or when you have a lot of participants in the session, can be difficult. So you might want something, but actually having it happen is different. So it's like just something I felt it has to be highlighted is that it's an ongoing learning process. It's not something one acquires instantly or even a month or two after. Even if I'm like, I have facilitators who are great role models. Like each session they introduce and the ethos, they try to welcome everybody, but still it's a work in progress, and I'm still trying to work on it. And there are situations where I felt that maybe I fell short on this or on that when I started the facilitation process. So even though you can know and internalize all these values, we still have to be very aware that to practice what we intend on doing, not just because it can come naturally, but also sometimes there are certain instances where you can fall short a bit. So this is something I feel is also very important, to keep learning and observing and different with every new situation that arises or difficulty or a certain comment that someone says, or a certain, maybe even with a connection issue or someone gets dropped out or in or something. All this are situations where when you're on the spot, you can feel a bit, So yeah, I think it's just an ongoing learning process for sure.
Thanks, Yasmin. I know, Alan, that we need to wrap up soon. I just wanted to respond to something Robin was saying. And she's saying, like, she wishes she could convince more colleagues and friends to join, but she knows everyone's busy. And I know exactly what you mean. I think people don't realize how transformative an experience might be until they experience it and they don't know what they're missing. We recently started to encourage people to bring a buddy, like bring a friend to sit next to you while you're in a session. Or I think committing to a 3-month thing is hard. And in the beginning, we used to say, oh, well, commit to one of the months. But we realized, what if you're free for like half of June and half of July? So we just, whatever, commit to the whole and come whenever you want and leave whenever you want, to feel like there's no pressure. Come and go as you please. But like, encourage someone to come to one thing that may be of interest to them. And we've realized, like, for example, a lot of people were so interested in AI. And so a lot of people signed up because of that. And then a few of them would also come to the other things. And that was like an entryway because it was such a hot topic at the time and people needed to know more about it. So there's going to be so much variety. And if you go to our website, you'll see past events and recordings of past events. So maybe that might help someone as well if they watch some of our old stuff, as well as if they look at the community building resources, which is that the 1he.org/equity-unbound site. And that's recordings again of us and how we build community. So depending on the person, the person that you're trying to invite in, is it someone interested in like AI and that kind of thing, or interested in community building? A lot of our sessions are not recorded. Going back to what you were saying in terms of like safety, the very, very open sharing things happened in unrecorded sessions where people could modify their names and turn their cameras off and talk in breakout rooms rather than the main room kind of thing. So we always have that.
I know. I want to learn how to manage Zoom sessions like Maha. I want that. You do the best Zooms.
Yes. And very attentive and always on the chat, but at the same time doing the speaking and facilitating and presenting everything. So yeah.
Was there? I think there was. Was that your last point, Maha? I'm bouncing between the chat and perfect. So let's just hear again, stage us when we're going to start hearing about how we. I think there's a sign-up sheet for MYFest, of course, but like, what's the rollout plan?
Well, we have an expression of interest form that is already live and online. If you go to the Equity Unbound website, you'll be able to click right onto that and then weigh in on the design of MYFest 25. So we would love for that to, be circulated. And, Robin, if you're curious, you can open that up and drop some ideas in there. Rollout wise, we have some very special things. Equity Unbound has some very special things coming up. We'll have an Intentionally Equitable Hospitality series in April, which leads into the June, July, August MYFest season. And I'll also mention that we're very thrilled to be anticipating a conversation with Audrey Waters in late April as well. So that's something that we're all looking forward to connecting on. And I'm sure the rest of the gang might want to weigh in too, but those are the things off the top of my head there.
Just going to say, as you express interest, let us know what you want to know more about. We have all the themes that we've done before, but you can suggest other things. And we have, can we tell people how to sign up for the newsletter? I think people who sign up for the expression of interest, we can sign them up to our mailing list as well. That's what Nadine was saying.
Essentially, this MYFest design is a completely collaborative, participatory effort. So every person who weighs in matters in the design of MYFest.
All right, I'm ready. I start out with grand ambitions and I get the newsletters and like, oh, I got to get in there. But I mean, even just to see again, like the range and the slate of things that were available last year. And so I expect as much or more this year. And I just want to thank everybody so much. When Maha came on early, we were talking, it's like a virtually connecting session. I miss doing this. But I'm so happy that we're still connected. And that says a lot to everybody here.
The unplanned, unscripted conversation to me is one of the most rich ways of learning, because it makes you realize how much you have inside yourself that's worth sharing, and how much listening to others helps you grow. It's that unplanned formatting, I think, that draws that out in each of us in different ways. So thank you so much, Alan, for having us pop in and share, because especially with this formatting, because it's super intuitive and perfect.
It's really it's the studio visit again, like we used to do. And I've had so much fun this week. I'm doing like 10 of these, and often there are people who don't necessarily cross paths as much or even know each other. And we have students, we have experts, and always something valuable comes out of that. And so I'm really excited about doing these.
But you're also one of the warmest hosts I've ever experienced. So I know it's partly the way your hospitality with everyone.
Yeah.
Say hi to the next group. I know you have one in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Say hi to them all.
Thank you so much. And just so everybody knows, I'll put out, I'm a card carrying introvert. This just drains me, but I love being with you all. And I'm gonna click a button, and there'll be some funky outgoing music, and then just can't.
I love that music.
Again. Thank you very much.
It's funky and cosmic.